So a lot of this is being done through the real world asset tokenization frenzy, and the push to move into natural capital, which I know we've talked about for actually a couple years now, and the idea of like securitizing natural resources or the global commons, the world's oceans, rivers, lakes, streams, and all of that. The guy that invented carbon markets really, Richard Sander, who's like an ex Drexel Burnham Lambert guy, and created, helped create derivatives and stuff. He wants to create, a private market, sort of like the carbon market, but for clean air and water. So get ready for your de facto air tax, guys. These are people making money and they want to make markets. And the way this crowd makes markets, I always go back to this Larry Fink quote where he says markets like totalitarian governments. Totalitarian governments can pose markets no one wants on the population. This is what happened. This is the China model, This is why people like Larry Fink love it over there. Mm-hmm. The federal government comes in to help out the markets. It's like centralized control for the purpose of creating controlled markets. And if this was a free market play, people would be like, no, I don't want to. Why do we need this stuff? There's no need for it. And they can try and manufacture consent through climate change, fear mongering and whatever. But at the end of the day, it hasn't worked. So how do they get it? Well, they have to have governments impose it on people. Mm-hmm. And when you have a complete surveillance panopticon, it's much easier to impose that on people than it otherwise would be. And they have all these markets lined up to impose on us. A lot of it involves, the complete destruction of the natural world, really, and just complete financial madness.
And what are all these assets denominated in? Dollars. They're dollar denominated assets, and so that it allows another place for the US government to shovel highly inflationary effects from printing a lot of money, which we know they have to do to be able to service the now $34 trillion of debt. The debt service is now outpacing the growth of our GDP. It's outpacing our military budget. So they need to find places to create artificial demand for dollars, and they do that by putting a price tag on the trees in your backyard and the methane coming out of your ass. And they do that, and they dollar denominate it, and now we're perpetuating the U.S. Treasury Ponzi market because you ate some pinto beans, That
was the Satellogic play, talking about measuring carbon emissions from space. They want to try and surveil this stuff from space so they can charge you for it. This is a market, right? But it's a market no one wants, and it's crony capitalism to the core.
Yeah. And Thiel's telling you, find a market that no one else is doing, because competition means price war, which means bad for revenue. Find a market that no one else is doing. No one else can possibly do this. No one else can build observation as preservation, carbon credit, blockchain market that's backed by US dollar instruments, that's tokenized debt, that's upheld by a surveillance network of satellites, that's upheld by oligarchs that own the grains in Argentina. No one can establish that market other than an extremely specific group of people. And guess what? They're all on the board of Satellogic. And guess what? They're all connected to Endeavor.
Do you still have your Bitcoin on an exchange? Don't hold your Bitcoin on an exchange. Take it into self-custody. If you're looking for an easy way to do that, we have the BitKey. BitKey is Bitcoin made easy to use and hard to lose. Take the first step. Get your Bitcoin off the exchange. Check out the link in the show notes. That'll get you 20% off your BitKey, or use the code TFTC20.
All connected to a lot of this PayPal mafia, this group that Whitney has really done the work of really mapping out. This mob connected, intelligence connected, banker, data broker, debt baron cabal, frankly. That is really just kind of taken over the private and the public sector. One nation under blackmail is now one world under blackmail, and they're shoving this debt, which is so useful to them, onto the natural world and buying up all of our data with it. It's incredibly disturbing, frankly.
No, it really is. And going back to just repeating what I said earlier, from a first principles perspective, all this is built on bullshit. You mentioned it, Whitney, the climate hysteria that's out there. We need to put these carbon markets and put the satellites up there to track all this because we have existential climate change, which plan on having some scientists who recently released a peer-reviewed paper that claims, and they would like to say proves, it's absolute bullshit because they're manipulating the data over time, and they use fear. That's like whether it's the carbon markets or the surveillance and the digital IDs, it's all either wrapped in some cataclysmic event due to climate change or terrorist. Again, go back to like TSA. Like we should.
What did 9/11 create? It created this state that we're talking about, this panopticon of the security state that was the private sector. 9/11 created all of that. There would be no consent for any of this stuff if it wasn't for 9/11. And then you go and look at the official story of 9/11 and everything that was going on there. And I don't want to get you that demonetized. I think we've already done enough here to attack your channel. But but no, for sure. Well, frankly, I don't necessarily feel super comfortable going on on here anyway. But just that, why do we have Larry Ellison coming out and doing a huge op-ed at the New York Times immediately after 9/11, being like, we need a central depository for everyone's data. We could have prevented 9/11. A literal CIA front coming out, demanding a central repository for all of our citizens' data.
Well,